All right, welcome in. It's the Breer Report for August the 15th. We've now seen 22 teams. We've been to 20 training camps, 3.5 weeks or so of travel. Plan is to get back out there next week. But before we do that, we did want to get to some of your questions because I haven't answered any of them in a little while. And so we're going to do a video mailbag right here, right now. I promise we'll do a print mailbag probably next week. We're going to bring that back soon for you. Again, looking to answer some of your questions here because you had a lot of them, and we're going to bank some of those and take them on probably next week in the print mailbag. But for right now, we got 3 questions. The first one's coming from Mr. Melvin. That's at Chi-Town Polo. Are the Jets taking calls on Breece Hall, and what will my Bears have to trade to get him? Well, Mr. Melvin, I would be hesitant to say anybody isn't taking calls on anyone right now. Over the course of the next couple of weeks, as we get closer to the cut down, and even after the cut down, there's going to be a lot of activity over the phones with teams floating ideas to other teams. And so I would just say that calls coming in on a player are different than calls going out on a player. And so if you're taking calls on a player, that's different than shopping a player. And the players that you would be looking at potentially would be would be guys on other teams going into contract years, in contract disputes. And Breece Hall does fit into one of those categories. He is going into a contract year. I think the Jets do have like some interest in re-signing him. And I think they would at least explore that if they haven't already. And looking at like what it might take to get Breece Hall signed long term. They've shown a willingness already. The new regime has, and Aaron Glenn and GM Darren Muji to take care of guys they inherited. They paid Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner at the top of those respective markets. But paying a running back is tricky. We've seen it took the James Cook situation a while to find a conclusion. And, certainly, you look at the top of the running back market with guys like Saquon and Derrick Henry, and then the next level down, it can become hard to place a guy. That said, a lot of times, when you are going to negotiate with a running back, you'll find a motivated partner. In a lot of cases, because running backs have a shelf life, they might be a little bit more motivated to do a deal. And I think in the end, if you look at the James Cook situation in Buffalo, that was a situation where you did have a motivated player to do a deal with the team that he was a part of. So again, I think they explore that, but with the fact that that's not done, certainly if you're another team, that's something you might sniff around. You also might sniff around the idea of it, given that they have some depth at the position. Like I think Braylon Allen, the big back that they drafted out of Wisconsin a year ago, has a chance to be a really good player. So that could make the Jets feel like they've got a little flexibility. If somebody makes them an offer, they can't refuse. So what would that offer look like? I think you'd have to be looking at a pick in the first 2 rounds based on where the Jets are, how they're going to build the offense, how they're going to create a running game through Justin Fields, and develop a young line. I think being able to be effective in the running game is going to be really, really important to their formula for winning in 2025 and their first year with, again, Aaron Glenn as the head coach and with Tanner Engstrom as the offensive coordinator. So I would say if you come with a second round pick and on the Jets, maybe I think about it, a second round pick plus something else. Maybe I really think about it, but it would have to be a really good offer if I'm the Jets to move off of Breece Hall for 2025. Question number 2, that's at Mike_Madden. If there is a less than 7-win season in Arizona, are they going to start looking to trade Kyler? That's an interesting question, Mike. They have a team that is, I think, coming to a maturation point from a roster standpoint. And, you look at all the draft picks they've spent over the last 3 years since Jonathan Gannon and Monty Ossenfort got there, and you're starting to see a core emerge. And if they hit on picks like Marvin Harrison Jr., Paris Johnson looks like he's got a chance to become an elite player this year. Trey Benson has shown some promise at running back. Obviously, Trey McBride's already in place and has already been paid. He's a little older than those guys. Darius Robinson, Max Melton. Now Walter Nolan coming in. When he gets healthy, they think the world of him and his potential. Now you're getting to a point where it's like, okay, like you need the trigger man that's going to help you take advantage of these guys coming into like sort of the front end of their primes where they're still on their rookie contracts, and maybe you're able to aggressively pursue contention. So I think that becomes a natural question if they don't make the playoffs this year. And I think that would all be a function of what's out there. In other words, look at the Rams in 2021 and where they were coming out of the 2020 season. And I think it was, a scenario there where it's not that they hated Jared Goff. Now, they were looking to upgrade from Jared Goff. There's no question about that. But if the right opportunity hadn't come along, I don't know what you do if you're in that spot. If Matthew Stafford isn't available, like, is there another thing that you can do out there that's going to allow you to level up at the position? So I think any like conversation about moving on from Kyler would have to be on the heels of Kyler not playing well. And they think he's in a good spot going into 2025. And B, there'd have to be another opportunity out there that would allow them to maximize the young core that they've already built, especially because if you have that sort of season and guys like Gannon and Austin Fort survive, then you talk about there being an enormous amount of pressure on everybody to win in 2026. Finally, question number 3. This is from David Beddick. That's at Beddick1. Hearing anything with Trey and the Bengals? Have the Bengals moved at all? It's getting ridiculous. David, yes, they have moved. They are well into the 30s. I don't think the big number, the average per year, the APY, is much of a problem anymore. I think that's where it needs to be. We've talked a lot about how the market moved over the course of the last 6 months, really. Going back to Myles Garrett getting his contract, TJ Watt winds up leapfrogging Myles Garrett. Then you look at the kind of the next tier of the edge rusher market. Danielle Hunter and Max Crosby land in the mid 30s. So I think right now that part of the equation isn't as much of a problem. Like, I think the Bengals are where they need to be, well into the 30s, if not closer to 40, when it comes to the APY. The bigger question is going to be the structure of the deal and the guarantees. He's 31 years old, and this is always a question with older players: how long do you guarantee the contract out? Do you guarantee into the second year? Do you guarantee into the third year? And this is also colored by the way that the Bengals have handled their star players over the course of the last couple of years, and so this goes back to Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow's contract broke a lot of the rules of negotiation that the Bengals have had for years and years about guaranteeing years out in the contract. Then this year, earlier in the offseason, you had the Jamar Chase and T. Higgins situations, and so many people tied those two together and acted as if they were identical. They were not. They were both big numbers. Jamar's number was bigger than T's, but there was another difference, that Jamar's deal was in the bucket of Joe Burrow's deal. It was guarantees down the line that broke previous precedents and rules the Bengals had set. T. Higgins' deal was a little bit more of a typical Bengals deal, done by the Bengals rules, done by the Bengals precedents. And so now the question becomes, if you're Trey Hendrickson, in the Chase Burrow bucket, or are you in the Higgins bucket? And how do you split that if you're the Bengals? Can you find a middle ground where maybe he's in between the two of them? That's the challenge that they have to overcome. And I think a big piece of this too, look, we're all human. Trey Hendrickson is human. This is his third offseason going through this. 2 years ago, he wanted a correction on his deal. His deal was initially done in the COVID environment. That made it so. The numbers were depressed. And, so 2 years later, he comes back. He's looking for a correction to that deal. He gets a 1-year extension, which was basically a Band-Aid on that deal. Then he comes back last year, again, looking for more. They don't give it to him. So he's now in his third offseason of fighting this fight. For that reason, I think you have to find a way, if you're the Bengals, whether it's real or not, to make Trey Hendrickson feel and look like he came away as a winner. And so that's a part of the equation as well. I still think it gets done. Whether or not it gets done, before week 1, we'll see. But there's a lot of pressure on Bengals management to get this right. And they don't need a great defense in 2025. Like, that offense is going to be dynamite. They just need a defense that's maybe middle of the pack that can supplement what they've got offensively. And Trey Hendrickson and obviously Shamar Stewart are two important pieces in getting there under first-year coordinator Al Gold. Appreciate you guys coming out. Keep those questions coming. We'll have another video mailbag for you next week. We'll have another Breer report for you next week, maybe 2 of those. And we are getting closer and closer to the regular season. Your feedback is always welcome. So we'd love your feedback on all the stuff that we've done during training camp. You can get me on Twitter at Albert Breer, on Facebook at Albert R. Breer, on Instagram at Albert_Breer. We will see you guys next week.